This week on the Endurance Nutrition Show, we're interviewing Kait Boyle, who recently broke the FKT on the Kokopelli Trail, which is it's mostly a double track trail that runs from Moab all the way through the LaSalle Mountains and to Fruita, Colorado. It's 140 miles long, and Kait Boyle recently broke the women's FKT in a time of 13:07, which beat Rebecca Rusch's previous time by 25 minutes. So this trail is no joke. Eleise and I had an experience on it this summer, and we learned that this is a true feat. It is no joke. So respect to the Kokopelli Trail.
Yes. And just in case you didn't know, we did not define what FKT means. It's fastest known time.
Exactly.
So we forgot to define what FKT is, and we forgot to ask her the official time. So that's what it is. 13 hours, 7 minutes.
Boom.
It's a very long day on the bike, but yeah, she has that record, and we talked to her all about it, like what she ate, what she
thought about.
Yeah,
the gear used.
kind of the views, the conditions of the trail,
the preparation,
how to get water,
all that good stuff.
Yeah, and like the type of Garmin she used. A lot of cool information. So you're gonna love this episode. We also, she also tells us her background. So
yeah, Kait is an amazing athlete, amazing person. She really puts her heart into everything she does. She's really inspirational. So I think you're really gonna love this interview with her.
Let's start by introducing our little food treat that you introduced to us. Did you make some for yourself?
Yeah, I have my date with cashew butter right here.
Yeah.
And I have a more dessert version of the recovery smoothie in that I just ran out of protein powder. So it's basically banana and all the other stuff.
Yum. Nice.
Yeah.
We have our little mint chocolate
We
chip.
gotta do a little cheers over virtual.
Yeah. I love that you have straws. I wish I had a straw. That's awesome.
Yeah, my husband uses straws for everything, so we have these glass straws. So
Glass, cool.
Very fancy.
Nice.
These are our little dates. We used
sun
butter because
I love sun butter, so we're like, we'll try it.
Yeah, sun butter is awesome.
Yeah. So the date, and then you said maple syrup too, because that's what. Do you always?
I had made cashew butter in my Vitamix, and I had put some maple syrup in with the cashews.
Oh, okay.
Just to make the cashew butter a little sweet.
Okay, I just drizzled it over the top of everything.
Well, that sounds great. I'll do that next time.
These are yummy.
Yeah, they're awesome. And when it's cold out, like it is here right now, you can put those like in a Ziploc or something, and they can go on the bike, and they don't like get all melty, as they would in the summer. So they're a nice
freeze up
cold weather treat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yum.
And then you're doing like sugar-free right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like dates and banana have their own sugar, but I'm trying to stay away from processed sugar just for a few weeks, just because training I've backed off quite a bit, and despite having a sweet tooth, I get pretty tired of all the training food after the end of the season, especially after a race like Kokopelli, where your eating is a chore during it. So this time of year felt like a good challenge to try some new things. And I almost sent you a message today about a new treat, because I've been making ride food that's just like pureeing like sweet potatoes and banana and applesauce and things like that into just like my own version of like whole food goos, and putting them in a gel flask, and they've been awesome.
That is something we really want to do.
Yeah,
here.
What brand of flask do you get? Because that has been my my problem. I haven't been able to find a brand.
Yeah, well, Goo Energy Labs makes a flask for their gels, and I have some of those that I put these purees in, and the thicker kind of food-based purees go right through the mouth nozzle thing, and so that works. And then there's also some kind of like rubbery flask-like things that I think are maybe more sold to hold like sunscreen or lotion in them, but they're like a travel containers. And I think places like REI sell those as well. So both those have been working well.
So I've seen those, and the problem I have with all of them is I want some that have like a slightly bigger opening so that I could put like a rice cakes, like a rice
Oh yeah.
kind of thing, like where you can get like a little more texture through it. But
Yeah.
On the hunt.
Well, let me know if you find one, because I have not found one with a big enough opening for that.
Next month we're interviewing this girl that makes like biodegradable packaging. Like,
whoa, cool.
She went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and she like, I don't know, she's I we'll have to talk to her to find more about like all of that. But I'm like, I'm gonna tell her all of my packaging needs that I want. And be like, okay, design all of this for us, please. But
the gel flask that rice can go through.
yes.
Very
Yeah, no, but
specific.
she had like, I found her because she just had this picture of like basically a biodegradable like gel. The packaging was biodegradable. I was like,
that's awesome.
Oh my gosh, this needs to like be a product, you know? So.
Definitely. Well, I'll look for that episode.
What do you? So you said you use sweet potatoes and then applesauce. Anything else?
Yeah, I made a couple last night. One was sweet potato, applesauce, like a cashew plain yogurt, and ginger. And then one was beets that I had boiled ahead of time, so they were soft. Beets, some blueberries, applesauce as well. And there was something else in there. Oh, coconut. And then one was kind of like our smoothie, but not as refreshing, I guess. Without mint. It had banana, the cashew yogurt, cocoa powder. And I think that's it. Yeah. So those are the 3 I've done so far. I've used avocado before, but I had such an avocado letdown yesterday. I had 4 and they were all rotten.
No, that's the worst.
I know. It was like, and they all had the look like they'd be ripe, but then as soon as you touched them, you're like, oh, these aren't good.
I have bad luck with avocado ripeness. It's like they're either just, it's like, oh, well, I ruined this because it's not ready yet, or it's like too late. It's like all black inside.
We should try out those foods because I would love to figure that out. 1, to reduce packaging waste, but 2, also it's just, I feel like when you're on those long rides, sometimes just the really sugary stuff the whole time just doesn't settle well with my stomach.
Totally. And you can make these so that you add just the amount of fat that you know, like your gut will be happy with, and will also keep you from bonking, and can make all different flavors. And yeah, there's so many other things. Oh, I added, actually thinking about it, a little bit of coconut oil is what I added to some of those. You could add chia, and really, like, if you go into the grocery store and look at the like hippie organic baby food, that's like where the inspiration came from, you know. It's like, oh yeah, pureed food. Totally.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, and then explain, I don't think you ever told us what's in these.
Oh yeah, so this is it's inspired to be a recovery smoothie. Might sound ridiculous, but while I was in Arizona, I have a tote in the guest bedroom of my best friend's where I used to live like 3 years ago, that's still there. And in it, and it's like kitchen stuff that I just never moved to Idaho. And in it, I found this little thing of peppermint extract. And so I was like, oh, I bet this is still good. That can't go bad. in 3 years. And so I brought it home and I've been adding mint to everything because mint chocolate's like my favorite flavor. And so the other day I was making a recovery smoothie and I used frozen banana and I use a Goo Roctane Recovery Vanilla Protein Powder. And then the mint extract caught my eye, so I added a little bit of that, and I was like, oh, this is like really close to being almost like a mint chocolate chip flavored ice cream. I just would need the chocolate chip flavor. And because of this sugar thing, I didn't have any chocolate in the house, but I had cacao nibs, and sometimes that can get you can get a similar flavor and crunch. And so I added that and blended it up, and it felt like I was drinking mint chocolate chips milkshake. And it was just banana whey.
And we have to show you the chocolate we found. Have you heard of Ritual? Sorry, the light's weird.
No. Oh, yes, I have had Ritual chocolate.
It's Sophia Villafane works there, and it's like owned by cyclists, and they're in Park City.
Totally.
Yeah.
My friend Evelyn Dong, her roommate, who is also Sophia. They work there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think their whole crew basically all works there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
this one's 100% cacao.
Yeah. 100%. And so we have this fancy grocery store in Utah called Harmon's, and they carry a lot of like local stuff. And so I walked in to get all the things for this, and I saw this. I'm like, duh, we're gonna use the Ritual chocolate because it's like also like the ingredients you can't. The lighting. Anyways, it's only cacao, so it's just
cool.
Kind of cool.
That's awesome.
We're gonna send you a bar, so we need.
Oh, thank you.
You need your address, but you don't have to say that over.
Okay.
Get that later.
I'll look forward to that because I went bikepacking with Evelyn in June, and she brought this like coffee size bag, like the beige paper bags that coffee goes in. She brought one of those full of Ritual chocolate, but it was all the like scraps, all the corners that broke off and whatnot of all the flavors. And so you just reach in and taste it and be like, well, I don't know what this one is, but I'm going to guess it's the such and such. And I'm pretty sure there were definitely some that were like very much mostly cacao. So
this one is very
awesome.
like fruity almost.
It's
very powerful, but it's yummy.
To be honest, it doesn't taste that much different to me than like 70% cacao chocolate bars. So
yeah.
Is there a nutrition label on this?
No, because it literally is only.
I'm just curious because like usually dark chocolate has a lot of iron in it.
Oh.
So I was just wondering. Anyways.
Great for endurance athletes.
Yes, I know.
Iron.
Yeah, and chocolate. It's good for you, right?
Exactly. Definitely.
Okay, and also we want to hear kind of how your social media fast is going.
Oh yeah. Yeah, people listening must be like, wow, she has all sorts of eliminations, and it's really just the
it's a good reset,
time of year.
Right?
Yeah, totally. And like I think people often think of January 1st as like the time to do new things or like try to set new habits. And, for me, like time trialing Kokopelli in early November was the end of a really like 2-year process of working towards something. And then November was just like pretty off and like not focused and just enjoying where I'm at. And now December is kind of like starting to think about next year and starting to base train again and just rethink about what my priorities are and thinking about like what sorts of changes do I want to make as an athlete next year in this next year. And so in that way it feels like December is the beginning of next year. And so that's where kind of the cleanse from sugar, the break from sugar is, but also social media, like it's such a tool and can do so many great things as far as connecting us and inspiring us and educating us. But it's also just so, like, it's just at our fingertips, at any moment that we have our phone and have cell service, which I think especially during this year with COVID, like we're more alone, for lack of a better word, or just like on our own and inside and not in groups of people. And so I've found that social media, I think that I've been even more connected to it, which has been positive, but I think it can also be draining, because it is a place where you just get so much information all at once, and it can be really positive information, or it can be really intense information, like around the election and social justice and the environment. And like, for me, as someone who is very passionate about a lot, like it can feel emotionally overwhelming. Like it can feel like I'm just taking on a lot.
I
And
can
so
relate to you on that for sure.
yeah,
It's draining.
it is. And like, I don't want to delete my account forever by any means, because I do think it has a really positive role. And it's also very much a part of my job as well, which is great in that like my purpose with social media is to hopefully have a positive contribution to the platform. But this just also felt like a good time to be like, like this month just feels like kind of turning in and reflecting and resetting. And so it felt like a good time to be like, yeah, and I'm going to try 2 weeks from social media. And it was inspired by a horoscope I read for Sagittarius eclipse season, where you should check out Chani Nichols. She's pretty amazing astrologer, but I just remember this line that I read, which was like right before Thanksgiving. She's like, and from November 29th until December 15th, you should do a deep cleanse. I'm like, oh, well, that seems like a great time to eliminate sugar, and maybe I should take a break from social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's, as far as timing, like it's kind of in between the holidays, and so I was kind of like, yeah, this is a fine time to unplug from this. And it's going really well. And the fascinating thing is that because it's not like, I actually deleted the little icon app on my phone. And I've noticed in times where I'm bored or procrastinating that my thumb will go to like to where it was. And that's fascinating, because it's just like, oh, whoa, it's not there. And so I think being able to actually physically remove it has been a really interesting tool in realizing when I mindlessly choose to go onto social media. And with that, of course, it creates space for other things, which has been really nice.
It's kind of insane how often at least for myself, that I go on social media just mindlessly without even realizing what I'm doing.
Totally. Yeah, just to see, just be like, oh, I have like 5 minutes until this next thing. I'll just go over here. And instead it's like, oh, I have 5 minutes, and I guess maybe I'll just sit with myself.
Think.
Yeah. Think.
Yeah, I think my husband and I are actually gonna do one in January. So
nice. I highly recommend it.
okay, so we also want to hear like kind of your background, like your synopsis of like, here's my life story and in a couple of minutes.
In a couple of minutes. Okay.
Or I mean, it can be longer. Just
no, totally.
I didn't mean to like limit the time.
No, totally.
We want to hear your story.
Okay. Well, that's a fun question. Well, I guess all stories start at the beginning. So I was born in Massachusetts. And that's where I was raised for the first 18 years of my life. And I grew up in a family who really enjoyed going outside, and was really encouraging of me to do whatever I was inspired to try. And so that pretty quickly led to riding horses. And from when I was about 10 until I went to college, riding and competing horses was my passion and how I spent most of my time. And I got a 4-year-old mare when I was 13 and trained her through middle and high school and showed her. And that is a big part of my story, because it was so formative in like how I spent time outside and connected to the outdoors. Because other than in the deepest of winter, you like mostly spend time with horses outside. And it also made me work really hard for something that I want. And horses are interesting.
You were how old when you were doing the horses?
10 to college. So through, like, as soon as I was old enough to, I think I started working at a barn when I was like 12 or so. I was in 7th grade, I think. And the interesting thing with horses is like they have to eat every day and they have to be taken care of. Like if you don't, that's like pretty big deal. It's not so much like another sport, like a bike, you know, like if you don't want to ride your bike, you can leave it in the garage and it'll be fine. It's not going to die. But horses have to be taken care of. And so that passion really made me work hard in order to keep riding. And I went to college. I decided to go to the University of Vermont because in my narrow lens of the world being the Northeast, that was where you went if you're passionate about the outdoors and the environment. And I was studying environmental studies and taking all of the outdoor education-based classes that I could because I had been introduced to rock climbing and backcountry skiing and thought that those were just incredible ways of spending time. And they were so liberating. And in that first year at college, I took a trip out to Idaho for a backcountry skiing and avalanche training course in the Sawtooth Mountains up by Sun Valley. And my teacher of that course suggested I transfer to Prescott College, which is a tiny liberal arts school, like 400 students in central Arizona, where everything is self-directed and you can major in like adventure education. And so I thought about it for a year and then I transferred and started pursuing a career in outdoor education. And around then I also started working for the Outward Bound School in Oregon, which is an outdoor education school that through expeditionary courses takes youth out mountaineering and whitewater rafting and rock climbing to build character and face challenge and learn leadership and teamwork and all that. And so that's what my path in my like early adulthood looked like. And in that I made the choice to leave the world of horses and left my horse in Vermont and didn't really look back. Because that work in the field for Outward Bound and being a student at Prescott College and then working for NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, really captivated me and was incredibly fulfilling because I would regularly go into the field from anywhere from a week to a month, and sometimes for those trips over the course of a whole semester. And I ended up doing that for 10 years. For all of my 20s and progressed into a associate faculty role at Prescott College teaching that. And during that time, I had kind of identified early on, I had identified rock climbing and backcountry skiing as like the two outdoor pursuits that I was really passionate about. And in 2010, I was bouldering and I broke my ankle, which is pretty common, bouldering. And I could probably say it's really common. But as many injuries to the lower extremities go, one of the first things I was allowed to do after my surgery was to ride a bike. And so I started riding, and a friend of mine who came down to where I was living in my truck in Indian Creek in just south of Moab to go climbing, and she got tired of climbing after a day. She was more of a mountain biker, and she was like, here, you should ride my bike and I'm going to demo this other bike. And she ended up leaving with a new bike and I had her bike. And so suddenly I was introduced to mountain biking, and I never really went back to much else. Like the mountain bike just ended up being this way of moving that really resonated with my body and my mind, because I love endurance movement. Like just going and moving all day is my favorite thing. And whether I'm on skis or on my feet or in a boat, and for the mountain bike, that was like a pretty ideal way to move, in that the ultra running I tried was always great, but my hips and my knees always hurt at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, rock climbing is nice, but like and it's incredible where you go while climbing, but like you're not covering landscapes, you're like going up a cliff. And so what you're seeing change is like very incremental. It's like grain of rock by grain of rock, not mountains. And mountaineering's wonderful, but it's so slow. And so mountain biking was this way to just, through moving at this comfortable endurance pace, I could see entire landscapes and move underneath me in a day. And in that realization, I was like, well, what happens if I take my overnight stuff, like I was backpacking, and I just brought it on my bike? And so I went and I bike packed the Kokopelli Trail with my 45-liter mountaineering pack, having no idea that, on my back.
Oh my
And I had
gosh.
no idea that bikepacking was a thing and that there were bags for your bikes and that existed. And granted, it was 2011. And so like, while there were bags, there was like 2 companies making those bags, and it was very small scene. Like the one website was bikepacking.net, and there were a couple of races like the Tour Divide and the Arizona Trail race and the Colorado Trail. So like it was a pretty small little niche thing at the time, which is how I justify having no idea about it. And I didn't have a smartphone also, which is maybe a different story. But so I bike packed to the Kokopelli, realized that that's really uncomfortable with the backpack, but
Were you by yourself?
No, I was with my boyfriend at the time. And which was probably the best thing that came from that relationship, was the realization that bikepacking is a real thing. Because we then rode the Great Divide mountain bike route, which is the Tour Divide route from Mexico to Canada, that summer on single speeds with proper bags. And that was really the trip where I was like, whoa, I just rode my bike for a month and I rode 2,700 miles, like, and saw the entire country, and not just like saw it, but experienced it, like with every single pedal stroke. And
I
so
really want to do that. I have this like obsession right now with that.
It's so worth it. Yeah, it's just, I don't think you could ever regret doing something like that. And so that was pretty big in a couple of ways for me. And one, like, it wasn't the first time I had been outside, living outside for a month, but it was the first time that that felt like a pretty huge physical feat for me. And it was really inspiring just to see, again, how far you could go on a bike with just the stuff that you need. And so that kind of launched this, probably the next 5 or 6 years. I just did everything I could in my time not working to go bikepacking, and that ended up taking me to the Alps and riding as close to the divide of the Alps through France and Italy and Switzerland for a month, and then down to Patagonia, northern Patagonia, and Chile and Argentina, and to New Zealand and Australia and Japan. And those were all just these like self-designed routes with a different boyfriend at the time. And he was a ultra racer, and through traveling with him I realized, like, well, and at this point I'd done very little racing. I'd done a couple like 50-mile bike races in the town of Prescott where I'd lived, but hadn't really dabbled in racing much. And so that inspired me to kind of see what I could do while racing. And I started ultra racing, and really from 2014 or 15 until now, like I'm still in this process, but it's just been this journey of setting goals, and pretty challenging ones, I guess, or like questionably attainable, and just doing everything I can to get ready for them, and then going and trying. And sometimes they have not worked, and I've been completely shut down for a variety of reasons, whether it's physical or mental or logistical, or just like things completely out of my control. And then through continuing to try and tweak things and strengthen all the things I can control, like my body and my mind and my systems, I've ended up having some successes that are pretty inspiring for me. Just thinking back on my whole story, like I have set course records on both self-supported and 24-hour races that rival those of the strongest men in the sport, and won a 24-hour world championship. And so that's really, that process has been incredibly fulfilling, and is what inspired me to kind of change career trajectories from outdoor education to pursuing more of a professional athlete path, and co-founding Bikepacking Roots, which is a nonprofit dedicated to bikepacking, because it has changed my life, and I hope to really ensure that bikepacking can change as many lives as possible, and advocate for the landscapes that we ride on. And so that's basically my life story. And the only thing missing, I think, is that just 2 months after winning the 24-hour world championship, I was in a car accident that shattered my pelvis and my sacrum and ruptured my bladder and put me in a wheelchair and with an external fixator. And the last 2 years of my life have been dedicated to recovering from that. And I think that the amazing thing sitting where I am now is, and looking back on it, is just having realized and experienced firsthand the power of what support from other people can do, and the power of just believing in something and waking up every day and trying. And sometimes it's like not the prettiest thing, and sometimes it's really unmotivating or like hard to believe in, but continuing to show up and do your best can actually lead to great things, like returning to ultra racing in my case.
Well,
I can't even imagine what you experienced, like just thinking about that, and getting back to where you are is like pretty inspiring.
do you feel like you're 100% at this point, or are there still things that are like a little bit not quite the same?
Yeah, I was talking to a friend today who was actually one of my instructors at Prescott College, and she is incredible. In this similar time frame, she's gone through breast cancer and had a knee replacement. She's almost 60 and crushing it. And we were talking about that question of like, are you at 100%? And I think what we both came to on this ride today was like, I don't know if I'll ever have a full answer for that, because I'm never going to be the same human or have the same body that I had before the accident. Like, that's just not possible. Like, at this point, I have screws in my sacrum. I just have like an additional 2 years of age. and I've just grown and changed. And so interestingly, like, I have now done things like in training leading up to Kokopelli, I had surpassed some of my prior like physical training markers from 2018, which would suggest that like I'm better than I was before. And at the same time, like I still feel it, like I'm limited in the mobility in my back because of those screws. And that's something I'm probably going to have to work on really hard for as long as I want to ask my body to do a lot of hard things. And I think, and I would imagine, and I go to a rolfer, and she does some pretty amazing body work, but I think there's still just like scar tissue to work through. And I think some of those things like just take a really long time. And so at this point, it's like the tiniest percentages, and I feel them. And at this point, it doesn't seem to be limiting what I can do. It's just something I notice, and it just makes it different now. Like warming up's different.
Yeah, I actually like broke my hand in a car accident last year just by honking, but
well,
yeah, I was honking. Well, I was honking when I crashed, so that broke my hand. Just honking.
You're like, that's an impressive honk.
Anyways, so honest, like it's not like my legs or anything, but it's like I couldn't ride outdoors while I had my broken hand. And I mean, even like I could ride on the trainer, but just like even though it was my hand, it was like I couldn't train at full capacity. Like it was like my body was using all of its resources to heal my hand, but
I don't know. It's just crazy when you're like, your hand is broken and you literally, it doesn't work anymore. And then you're like, will this ever get back to normal? And, and now it
Totally.
does. Like now it's all normal. It's a little bit weaker than it was before, but it's
Yeah.
mostly back.
Well, I think you touched on something really huge, and if my boyfriend can hear me right now, he's gonna laugh because he's been watching me practice being patient for so long now. But like, so with injuries, I think it's so easy to be like, oh, well, like this is broken or this needs healing, and like I can just work around it and continue to do all these other things like train or my job or whatever. But in like what you said about like so much energy goes to healing, that I think one of the hardest things and one of the best things we can do is just like accept that we need to heal and let ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, like it takes such a just kind of letting go and trusting that you will heal and trusting your body and that with time it'll happen. And it's so hard, I think, especially for motivated individuals, and which I think most athletes are like,
Mm-hmm.
we just want to do something, to like make it better. And sometimes it's just like waiting and giving it the right environment.
Totally.
That reminds me of a song. I don't know if you like Future Islands.
Oh, I don't know them.
Yeah,
I don't either.
I love them so much. They're like one of my favorites. But they have this song that talks about how you can clean a wound, but really it just takes time to heal. So like you can
Totally.
do all these things, but really your
Mhm.
body needs the time and energy and resources to be able to heal itself.
Totally.
So, and
No,
sometimes
it's so
that
true.
waiting game is hard.
Yeah. And I think it's such a metaphor for everything else as well. Like whether it's getting ready for an event and training, like, yeah, you can do everything each day and like it doesn't happen overnight. Or wanting a certain career or a degree in something, like, yeah, every day you wake up and you do the things. And eventually it will all pay off and come together, but it never happens overnight.
Yeah. It's like a little bit at a time, just like chipping
Mhm.
away is more powerful than one big effort.
Totally.
Which I guess that kind of leads into your big effort of Kokopelli.
Yeah.
We really wanted to talk to you about that because Eleise and I tried riding Kokopelli. Very less prepared and didn't go as well.
Here's the thing. We went, like, it was our first time doing it. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm from Grand Junction, so the fact
cool.
that it's, I guess I'll just describe, I was going to ask you to
Yeah.
describe it, but I'll just describe it real quick.
Yeah, you should.
It's basically from Moab to Fruita, Colorado,
Mhm.
which is right by Grand Junction. And it's just double track trails the whole way, which sounds like it would be easy, but the terrain was a lot.
It's not easy. It like
It's the most deceiving route description ever.
we were very humbled.
We had no idea how it's very technical for being like double track, I
Totally.
guess.
Like a Jeep trail.
And so anyways, we were not prepared.
It was a good experience.
Yeah, we went into our first time doing that, and it's what, 100 miles?
120.
120.
140?
Or 140?
140.
Obviously, we were unprepared. So
140 miles,
Yeah.
Moab to Fruita. Yeah,
Mhm.
so we went into it like, oh, let's just try to get the FKT. Well, we saw
Nice.
so embarrassing.
we saw Lachlan Morton got it,
Mhm.
and so it was like, I saw it, I was like, I have to do this. Like, it's calling to me because I'm from Grand Junction, so I just have to, So
That's
anyways,
awesome.
that was our story. And then we were like, we did it the next weekend, and we were just trying to like figure everything out. But
The thing that put our ride to a halt, Eleise broke her cleat.
Oh, wow.
And
That's rare.
I know, it was like literally we had any other thing that could have gone wrong, we had it ready, and then
Yeah.
she broke a cleat. And then actually it was really funny because Rebecca Rusch afterwards was like, oh yeah, I always carry an extra cleat.
Oh, wow.
And we were like,
Maybe I
well,
should start doing that.
I know, I was like, well,
don't.
maybe we learned. So
Yeah.
anyways, we
That's
were really
amazing.
excited when we saw that you broke the FKT because we know how hard that is. It's a hard trail. It's a very demanding, and eating is a
is.
chore.
Oh, absolutely. It is, and it's interesting because the White Rim, which is really like the Kokopelli Trail's neighbor, has gotten so much attention with FKT getter afterers, and ever since Payson. Yeah, and that's 100 miles, and the men's FKT is like 5.5 hours, and the women's is just under 7. And so if you look at that, and then you look at Kokopelli, and like the men's FKT, Lachlan's was like 11:15, and then Rebecca's was like 13:30. And so if you look at those, you're like, oh, those could totally come down, like 100 miles versus 140. But that really speaks to how demanding and just different Kokopelli is. And I have a feeling that there are a lot of people who has set out on Kokopelli and gotten completely hosed and sandbagged, or just so. That's awesome that y'all went out, and you should go back now that you know.
Well, it's actually funny. I feel like it's like this thing, it's just like consumes you, and it's just like always gonna be there and always have this obsession with it. And eventually we'll go back and ride the whole trail, so we know like really what we're getting ourselves into, because we only did the first 80, 90 miles.
We pulled out at Dewey Bridge, but we had already taken the wrong route in the first, on the Sand Hill Road in
The
Moab.
Sand Flats Road.
Yeah, we went right instead of left at that one fork, and so it just added 10 miles onto our ride. It wasn't we were never lost, but I was like, when I finally turned my GPS on, or the map of the GPS, I was like I should be at this mileage. I don't know why I'm not. So
oh dang.
Ends up we were off.
We went off, and then when she broke her cleat, we're like, well, we are way off.
It was right
there you can
in the rocky section, so we were like, oh, this is the perfect time to break a cleat.
Yeah. Well, you can record that as attempt 1. For me, I think that this was the 4th time I had started a fast-ish effort on Kokopelli. So sometimes it takes that obsession and commitment. And so I had not been out there since my car accident, and this just because of the length of time that it takes, it was really this ideal ultra for me, because it is an ultra, but it's really one of the shortest ultras you could do, and then it's a full day. It doesn't go overnight if things go well. And it's not multiple days. And so knowing that I want to return to multi-day racing, Kokopelli seemed like a great thing to do during this year, to see what happens and see how my body holds up. And with the pandemic, it's attainable. I didn't have to fly anywhere, and could just drive down and start in Moab, and my boyfriend Will was wonderful enough to go pick me up at the end.
I'm curious about what your preparation was like for
physically or all the logistic systems stuff, or both?
Mostly physically, I'm kind of curious, but also logistically. Start with physical, because
first off, what's your training like? Do you have a coach?
Yeah, so my teammate Kurt Refsnyder has been my coach for a long time, maybe 5 years or something. And he also set an FKT on the Kokopelli that day, and he had the FKT before Lachlan did.
Yes, so I've followed that little saga a little bit. It's kind of fun.
Pretty hilarious, because Lachlan's incredible, and he's a pro tour road cyclist and incredibly talented. And Kurt is not a pro tour road cyclist, but if could choose any surface to ride on, it'd be boulders. And so the Kokopelli, I think, is a really fascinating meet in the middle of the two for them. But so for me, for training, I had his guidance in terms of just knowing what the course is like and what it takes to have a fast run. And then, but mostly the approach that I had to take was just like building back from really like this long-term ground zero from the accident. And so this spring I had developed tendonitis in my hip, and I took like 6 weeks off from anything challenging. It was just like really easy short rides while that healed. And so really starting in at the end of June, like end of June, early July, was when I was like, okay, I want to try to build up to Kokopelli, and that'll be like the one thing I do in 2020 that's race related. And so with this history of tendonitis, especially, I just built really slowly and kind of built a strong base with just a lot of zone 2 riding and like a lot of long trail rides. And I would only like pedal in harder zones just to get over features, like as the trail made me, just to stay on my bike, but no structured intervals for most of the summer until kind of mid-August. And then I started doing some tempo, which is like, again, really generally a slow progression as far as like, that was like 6 or 8 weeks into training, or loose training. And then the more structured training really started in early September. I went and put, I think, like 36 hours on the bike in a week. And that was all on my mountain bike, on trails in Montana and Idaho. And
That is
forget,
a big week.
yeah, it was a huge
all
week.
on trails.
It was massive. And my ATL, like some of the metrics on Training Peaks, were the highest they'd been in since around training for 24-hour worlds. And my body handled it really well. And that
Is a
was
week
when I
like
was like,
that, is that normal for you, or is that like a big week?
that's a really big week. That's like a kind of big training, one training block in a week, essentially. And we do that and then like take a pretty long recovery, like longer than a normal recovery period, because the goal is to truly recover. Like it shouldn't have the toll of a race, and so to recover and then resume training. But in doing that, and like I had done that in the past, and often like bikepacking is a great way to do it, because you just are on your bike for so many hours of the day that the volume just adds up. But those big volume periods kind of gives you this incredibly deep base, and it raises your CTL pretty high. And so then when you go back to training at like 15 to 20 hours a week, but with intensity, like suddenly it just doesn't feel like as much of a demand. And so something I've noticed is after I do that, suddenly everything else that would have felt hard before just doesn't as much anymore. And my body can do a lot more, and it recovers a lot faster. And I don't know that everyone would work that way. It might not be the best way to spend your time. But for me, it works. And it was also a huge mental boost, because to go 2 years just not knowing what my body could handle as far as like the strain of ultras, to have a week like that where the physical toll of that training in that week is the same or greater than one single day race is a huge mental boost. I'd be like, oh, okay, like I didn't break. I can do this. I didn't get tendonitis again. And so following that, training was really focused on just doing a ton of time in sweet spot and a lot of really long, or maybe not really long, but long rides with a lot of tempo, and sweet spot in them. And with that, my long rides were probably like just 7 to 9 hours. And then I'd spend just a lot of time doing sweet spot intervals. And I didn't really spend much time working in any zones like threshold, like zone 4 or higher. If you pace yourself well for Kokopelli, like you just don't need to spend much time in those zones. And so just having enough in your legs to like be able to pedal the technical sections and not be burning all your matches at once. So
Do you remember that there's like that really, really, really steep climb before the walk section?
yeah.
Do you remember that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's very vague. I remember there I was like, oh no. I was like, because I was definitely getting into like threshold or higher there, and I was like, uh-oh, I should probably not be pushing myself this early on. But
totally. And that's like an interesting strategy thing for ultras. Like it's so easy, especially when you're like peaked for an event, you feel so good to just govern yourself and to make like, I have it's a little less so in Kokopelli where you start with like so much road climbing at first, but in more single track races, like I make myself get off really early, like when I know I could be riding things, but it's just that like saving those, you're not even saving those efforts because you just don't ever want to be in like your VO2 max when you're racing for 2 days, because what you do want to do is be able to pedal your bike the next day in any zone. And so with Kokopelli, like with all that training, it was really focused on like being able to ride a really steady and efficient pace up the 2 climbs in the La Salles, and then to be able to recover from that, and then just be able to like basically ride tempo as long as I could. And once I blew up from tempo, to know that I would still be able to pedal in zone 2. And so that was the strategy around the training, and it worked.
Yeah, apparently. I'm curious also about your setup, like your bike. What type of bike were you riding? What type of gear did you carry with you?
Yeah, I rode a Pivot Mach 4 SL, which is a 100 millimeter travel bike. I have a 120 millimeter fork on the front.
And that's a full suspension?
Yeah, and that's a full suspension 29er. And actually, Lael Wilcox, who also came and raced that day, she reached out and was like, "What do you think? Someone's trying to convince me to ride a hardtail. What do you think?" And it's interesting when you think about it, because like the route by description is mostly road, and there is actually like a good amount of it that's like graded road and paved, but the sections that aren't are notable enough that I think that you would actually, like, at least I would destroy my body trying to race a hardtail on it.
It's funny you say that, because we had this huge like debate. We're like, okay, hardtail or full suspension, and
it's very debatable.
we couldn't decide. But so I work at Fazari Bicycles and I race for them, and they were developing a new prototype hardtail, and so it was still in like the prototype stages, but we're like, well, might as well try it out. So that's what we rode. But honestly, I think if I did it again, I think I would do a full suspension.
Yeah, and it is a toss-up again, because it's like so split, and I'm sure that the climbs in the La Salles felt awesome, and there's a long stretch in the middle that would feel amazing on the hardtail, and like everything descending out of the La Salles, like for me to go fast and be recovering at the same time, the full suspension just makes that much of a difference. And then the last 15 miles of the Kokopelli are the most technical of the whole route, and to be able to ride that and stay on my bike as much as possible and continue to just be like, riding pretty efficiently, like that's really the time where I think you can either waste a ton of time like futzing around or getting on and off, or you can just continue to stay on pace by just moving forward and riding smoothly, especially at that point with like a really fatigued body.
What is the second half?
Yeah,
like?
We never made it to the second half. So
from Dewey Bridge on,
it taunts me all the time. I'm like, what is it?
Well, the cool thing for me was that I had not made it past Dewey Bridge in prior attempts. And so I hadn't been past there since that time I bike packed it in 2011. And it turns out I didn't remember any of it, which was really fascinating. Like I spent most of my time riding that section being like, wow, I've been here. This is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this before.
Like, I swear I've never been here.
Yeah, but it kept me engaged because I never knew what was coming. But after Dewey Bridge, you do this section called the Yellow Jacket section, and that's notoriously sandy. And it's kind of like you climb in a rolly sort of way, in a sandy sort of way, up over this kind of pass mesa thing, and then descend, and then you're riding along the Colorado River, and you're actually on trail for a little bit, and it's kind of, not chunky, but like you're riding along Badlands, and so it's like it's engaging, I guess is a good word for it. There's like eroded sections and some rocks, and just it's really beautiful too. And then after that, there's this long section of dirt road that for me that day, it felt really fast and I was really enjoying it. I also had, without planning this up all. I just lucked out to have cloud cover all day. And so,
That's not good.
yeah, it was lovely. And if I hadn't, this would be the section that could be pretty demoralizing because I think it could be so hot. Like you're just out there and there's no trees and it's a like false flat road. I don't actually know if it's like a false flat uphill or a false flat downhill, but you're just riding along. It feels pretty flat, but you're working. Yeah, and it's long and then you turn and you climb up this paved road from the Westwater boat ramp. And so then you're on pavement for a while. And at this point, like I think this is where it can sound like the route is easy because it's like it's flat and it's dirt and it's paved but in reality, like there's no coasting. Like from when you hit Dewey Bridge until the moments that you get to coast a little bit while riding the trail at the end, like you just don't coast and you're just steadily on it the whole time. And so for me, it was somewhere right around the end of that paved section. And I don't remember the mileage. It was probably like mile 110 or something that my wheels started to come off. And I started to be like, oh my God, I can't ride at tempo anymore. And you start to climb like then chunky sandstone again up onto this mesa, where then you're on this mesa and there's this edge. And I think you're around the Utah-Colorado state line and you descend down. And I don't remember what this section is called, but it's basically from the Utah Colorado state line all the way over to Rabbit Valley.
It's not Rabbit Valley.
It's everything that's just to the west of Rabbit Valley, and it's really beautiful and really cool. You're like down in this like below the Badlands and among these like sandstone domes, and the Colorado River is out there. There's these canyons, and it's more like a motorized trail system, and so you're no longer on like a road that people are driving on. And so it's just a lot more engaging again, and the landscape has changed quite a bit. And so you're riding that, and it can be sandy in places out there again. And then you get to Rabbit Valley, ride a graded gravel road for just a couple miles, and then get on single track, which is amazing trail, and it's really fun, and it's really quite technical in places. Like there are places that I'm sure you'd be psyched to have a trail bike. And it's just like riding kind of on the rim of these plateaus and going in and out of drainages, and so it's pretty punchy. Like you have really short descents and then really steep climbs, and there's a lot, yeah, it's ledgy. I wouldn't really recommend trying to ride it in the dark if you could time your
start early.
FKT. Yeah, totally.
Are there parts that you have to hike a bike on that section?
Really short parts. Like there are a couple places where there are just these like there's a boulder pile, and you're like, well, I'm gonna like put my bike over my shoulder and try to like use my hand to get up this thing, but it's like a couple steps and then you're back on.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that big
nothing
boulder
long.
pile at the like it's like 10 miles before the Dewey Bridge basically? That was like demoralizing. we're like
we did not anticipate.
We're like, are we on the right trail?
I know where you're talking
Is
about.
that the way?
I think you're talking about dropping into Cottonwood Canyon. There's some boulder piles down there.
There's just this one huge hill that you have to go up.
To people, right?
Oh no, that's Rose Garden Hill. Yeah, that thing is insane.
I was like, I don't think I could even ride down this, let alone up it.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like when going into this, like you see the promo videos where it's just like, I just got the FKT, but like no one talks about like, oh, this trail is intense. So that's kind of why
eat you up alive.
That's why we thought we were like, we would be the perfect people to interview Kait because we know the struggles.
Yeah, no, you're not exaggerating anyway. There is like a vertical boulder pile that you have to push your bike up, and it takes a long time. Like, it's more than 10 minutes of really strenuous. Like it's long enough that your arms get tired.
Well, it's like the boulders are like waist high, so you're kind of like hoisting your bike up.
Oh, totally.
You're just like okay, like next
Yep.
one. Like,
Yeah, in your bike
going.
shoes.
Yeah.
Yes.
With the broken cleat.
Yeah.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What did you do about your GPS? Did you have to charge it? Do you have that long of a battery life?
Oh yeah. No, that's a good question. I was debating up until the day before about exactly what to do. Because I use a Garmin Edge 520 normally for my riding, and that's like what records my power and does all that kind of cycling specific stuff. But that battery that unit was pretty old, and so the battery life was dwindling, and it had been so long since I'd like pushed it to go any longer than 9 hours. And so I just didn't quite trust it. And knowing that I didn't quite trust it, if it died and it charges off a USB, but that device was so old that the USB port was like worn out, and so a micro USB cable wouldn't really stay in it. And so I brought a Garmin Edge or Garmin eTrex 20, which is more of like a backcountry GPS. It's like great for navigating. It runs off AA batteries, and the batteries last for like 24 hours nonstop before you replace them. That's what I use bikepacking. And so I was torn between just winging it and going with just the Edge and knowing that it could die and I wouldn't be able to charge it. And then decided that was a bad idea because I didn't think I could actually ride the whole route off memory. Especially since I didn't remember, it turns out I didn't remember any of it after the just when it would have died. Or just using the eTrex, which is great for navigating, and I just would be racing without power, which for me is, especially in that sort of race, like it's such a great tool for me for pacing. And so I ended up riding with both and just decided that like however many ounces extra, it was worth it. And so my Edge did die at hour 9.5. And that was fine. And I had my eTrex, and that's just what I was navigating with, and it worked out really well.
So,
And
so that was recording your ride, and also like it brings up a map.
Yep. Yeah, I was doing both.
So why is it that you brought the Edge then? I'm just curious.
For power,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it was purely just for pacing for that tool.
Okay.
It had been so long since I had raced that I really thought that in being able to look down and just know that I was right in my tempo or sweet spot zone, that I was good to go. Because yeah, I think it's definitely worth like learning how to pace yourself without that. And for me, it had just been so long since I had like felt as fresh that you can feel and excited from being peaked. And that's like the thing that happens to me is I just get so excited that suddenly like I feel great, I'm definitely riding in tempo, and I'll look down, it's like, oh, upper threshold, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Like,
that's actually not so sustainable as it feels.
Yeah.
So
That's something we didn't do. We did not have power. We were just, that's something we would need to.
Well, I just don't have power on my mountain bike. So.
yeah.
And plus we were riding like random bikes that we didn't normally ride. So I
didn't have heart rate or power or anything. We were like totally blind.
Yeah.
It's good
And I
to
think
learn.
that can work well, totally.
Yeah.
And like being able to race off perceived effort is awesome. I'm not there right now.
Well, we weren't either. So I do have a question. What did you eat? How often did you eat? Or did you have like calories per hour you were shooting for?
Yeah, I have it written down. I don't remember exactly what it ended up being for totals, but I fuel myself based off of grams of carbs per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I just choose foods that are mostly carbs and have a little bit of fat. And I don't really worry about I don't worry at all about the calories from the fat because it's really just helping me.
Mm-hmm.
But I strive for 50 grams of carbs an hour. And I think when I emptied out my pack recently and just added it all up, what I did eat, and it was like 48 grams. So I was like right there with what I was going for.
That's
yeah.
really
And well, and that's where the chore comes in. It's like, that wasn't by choice. That was like okay, and it's been 30 minutes and it's time to eat this much. And now it's been an hour and it's time to eat this much, and so on, until it's just force feeding myself. But I think that what I've learned through longer races is just like, you just have to start on top of your nutrition. And especially if you're pushing your pace at all, like you just can't come back from a slump in your nutrition. If you want to be on any sort of like personal best sort of ride. So that was the approach. The food itself was a mix of some more real foods and some sports nutrition stuff. Like, I think I started with like, I'm not going to remember exactly, but a number of GU energy gels, probably like 6 or so, and a few, maybe 3 of the packets of the GU energy chews, and 2 servings, which are 70 grams of carbs or something, of their Summit tea, which basically tastes like sweet black tea in your bladder. And that was all my like pure carbs. And then I had chocolate chip cookies that I made.
Always
some
a good
like
choice.
Oh yeah, I can't race without gluten-free chocolate chip cookies, so that's a go-to. I broke one of the rules of racing of like, don't race on something you haven't eaten during training before, and I just went for it. And I normally race with some sort of like blueberry muffin, and so I did that, but I just used a new recipe that had almond butter and yogurt in it, and they were really great because they're super moist. And I had a couple Joj bars. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
We really want to try those. Yeah.
They're amazing. Okay, I have a box of them that's really big, and I will send you all some. So we'll exchange.
yes.
Yeah,
We'll trade chocolate.
That sounds great.
Joji bars.
Yes, that sounds great. Because they're fantastic. They're really chewy. They kind of have like the chewy cookie texture. So like a lot of bars are really dry, and so those are really chewy. And ingredients wise, they're just like a good blend of brown rice, flour, and just some like better for you sugars, and the flavors are awesome. So
have you tried the bacon one?
Yes, the bacon one is delicious, and I think that for me, that's not a flavor I would be able to race with. I'm not one who would like stop at the aid station and eat the bacon.
Yeah,
but
that one just is so intriguing to me.
It's delicious, like for just your average mountain bike ride or like skiing. I think it's gonna be awesome. But yeah, and I think I'm trying to remember if there was anything else, but I think that's more or less it. Yeah, so not super diverse, but again, it's like 13 hours, and the goal was to eat 48 grams of carbs an hour.
We ate, what did we eat? I had potato cakes.
Yeah, so I made rice cakes and potato cakes.
Nice.
And we had some spring
energy
gels,
gels,
some
goos. We
That
had
sounds good.
a lot of food.
and some like peanut. But did we have cookies? We might have had cookies. I know I bought some like muffins from the store the night before. And
I just remember eating those potato cakes because they're like so yummy, and it didn't seem as much of a chore to eat like salty potatoes.
Yeah.
But
salty potatoes are good.
Here's what was interesting, like another reason why it didn't work out so well for us. So in the week leading up to this, like I had a lot of anxiety about it, just like figuring out what it was, everything about it. And like so we did it on I want to say a Sunday.
We did it, Sunday
because I remember going, like, knowing that I needed to go to work the next day.
Okay.
Like,
that's stressful.
That's why we pulled out. I was like, I'm like, if we're not on time, like, if we're not on like pace, like, I'm not gonna just do the finishes because I have to work tomorrow. So anyways, but like from Wednesday to Saturday, I was waking up every morning at 2 a.m. and just not able to sleep, which I'm like,
I'm a sleeper. Like that never happens for me. And you kind of had.
I was
a
pretty
little bit
chill.
I thought you had a little bit of that.
I had a little bit of anxiety the night before, but I think the week leading up, I was just been like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what we're doing. So.
And then all like, so I'm usually like a very chill person. Like I don't get a lot of anxiety. And so when I do, it's like, it's hard for me to eat. Like my eating gets off and like everything. So it's like, in the 4 days leading up to this, like my eating was weird, my sleeping was weird. And so then, and usually like once I start an event and start riding, like I can just eat normal again and like start to feel normal again. But it really didn't quite get like that. Like I was like force feeding myself from the like first hour. Like I just food wasn't good, and so
I think there was just too many unknowns for us, and I think once you have a few more knowns, you know, it probably will be less anxiety inducing.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I mean, I think that uncertainty can just be incredibly stressful.
Yeah. So next time we'll just like not be as set on getting an FKT.
We're just gonna ride it.
We're gonna ride it, and we'll see. We'll just see how it goes.
Yeah.
I want to bike pack it, like take several days and really enjoy.
That would be fun.
How beautiful it is.
Yeah, I think that helps. Just having an idea of what the route's like helps so much with just then having confidence in like your bike choice and having confidence in like your pacing strategy and just knowing like what to expect, you know, like even though I hadn't ridden from Dewey Bridge to the end within my memory, like being able to talk to Kurt of like, so what exactly is it going to be like? That's so helpful, you know, because then you're like, well, he didn't lie.
Were you three together the whole time, or kind of just like within eyesight, or just on your own?
Yeah, so Lael and I started at the same time. It was like 4:15 in the morning. And she took off up the first hill a little faster than I thought I should start. And so, but then sat up and I passed her. And then her light just slowly fell behind me up Sandflats Road. And it was dark all the way up to the top of that climb. And so I didn't see her again for the rest of the race. And then Kurt started, I don't know exactly what time, but like a half an hour after us on his own. And he passed me on the second climb going way faster than I would have guessed. And he basically was just like, nice job, keep it up. And like took off, and that was it. And so, I was like literally with Lael for like 2 seconds and with Kurt for like the seconds that he just rode by. And so it was cool in that way, like to know that people were out there, but also to be just kind of in my own space and be able to focus on what I needed to do. And it was also like, it was definitely exciting to have Lael there. Like she's an incredibly accomplished ultra racer, and I'd never met her in person or raced her before. So to have her behind me, like I had no idea how far behind me she was. And so I really thought at any moment she'd just like pass me. So that was good motivation.
Yeah. Were you kind of like watching the clock the whole time anxiously, or were you just kind of like, okay, I know what power I have to hit, and if I stay within this range, I know I'm on track? Like, what was your mindset kind of during it?
Yeah. Well, so for any race that I like go into with some sort of finishing time goal with, I have splits that are a tool for me to break it down into chunks. And so with this, it's like for Kokopelli, it was from the start to the top of the first climb, and then from the top of the first climb to the top of the second climb, and then from there to Dewey Bridge, and so on. And I just break it down by these like parts, and I have a estimated time goal. And really what that does is it makes it so that I can't think about the finish, because if at hour 1 I'm thinking about hour 13, or like the fact that I have 130 miles to go, like then mentally at that point, like I'm already hosed. Like I'm gonna slow down inherently, because I'm just like, oh my God, that's so much farther. But if I just think about like at hour 1 I only have like another hour until the top of like my first finish line, essentially. Then I can just focus on that. And then for the next section, it's like, okay, now it's just an hour and a half or whatever till this next finish line. And so I just have all these like mini finish lines along the way. And that's really what I focus on. And I try not to, sometimes I'll just not even have like my overall time, my elapsed time, like running in front of me within sight. Cause ultimately, like, it doesn't really matter if I'm just on my splits for these smaller chunks, because it'll add up.
It's kind of like intervals, like just make it
Totally.
through one and then make it through the next one. It's like
Yeah,
one thing at a time.
totally. Like, you're not going to think about, you shouldn't think about interval 12 when you're on number 2, you know?
Yeah.
You think about interval 12 when you're at 12.
Yeah.
And then what about water? What did you do for water?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one for Kokopelli because there isn't much. And so I think that a lot of success comes from like figuring out how much you need to carry and not over carrying so that you're not just weighed down unnecessarily, but then also not running out. This, as we all know, running out in the desert, running out of water in the desert is a horrible idea.
Yeah.
And consequential definitely for your FKT, but, or just health in general. So and then the other thing with the water in Kokopelli is that it's pretty seasonal. Like, there can be more water in the La Salles, just depending on if it's the spring or if it's been a wet monsoon. And so I didn't actually really know the status of some of the water sources that are more seasonal, but I knew of the ones I could count on. And so I started with like 1.5 liters in my bladder, and knowing that it was like starting in 45 degrees or something in the dark. I wouldn't need more than that for the first 2 hours. So I drank that, and then I filled a bottle for the next climb. And then I filled probably like another 2 liters or so. And that got me from essentially near the top of the second climb, or like hour 3-ish, you can fill water. And then the next water is at Dewey Bridge, and then in the Colorado River. And then the next water is like a little, like 45 minutes after that, also at the Colorado River. And so I got to Dewey Bridge and I still had water. And so I passed that water stop and I stopped at the McGraw Bottom access to the Colorado River, and I filled up. And that's the last place you can get water until very close to the end. And so I filled up all my water capacity, and which was 2 liters and 2 bottles, and drank that. And the cloud cover helped a ton because it was like 65 and cloudy all day. And so it was super ideal for that route, in that I probably would have had to drink way more if it was hot. Or I know I would have had to. And then at mile like 130, probably, you cross Salt Creek. And there is water in there if you need it. And at that point, I could feel my bladder, and it felt like I had about like a half to 3/4 of a bottle of water left. And so I just didn't get more water. I finished with a few sips of water left.
Nice. And did you just use like tabs, purifying tabs, or?
Yeah, I used Aqua Mira. It's a liquid 2-part solution, and I pre-mixed it in a little like eyedropper bottle.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have to wait. And I did that just the night before.
Yeah, I have Aqua Mira, me and my husband, but I was like, I don't want to be like sitting there mixing, like
totally
trying to do this. So
okay. Yeah, you can pre-mix it for like the next day and it works.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Then you just have to like make sure you do the math right for how many drops you're adding.
Right.
So.
and like once you add those in, you have to wait like 30 minutes, right, to start drinking?
Yeah, I think it's 15.
Okay.
For Aqua Mira. Some of the tabs are 30 or longer, but yeah, Aqua Mira is 15 minutes. So I would just, getting to a water source, I just drink whatever I had left and then fill my water, and I was fine.
Those were all the things that we were just like, how do you do this? So
cool. Well, you all should definitely go back. Like, one thing, the Rebecca Rusch's record lasted for 7 years. She set it in 2013, and which it was an incredibly strong record, and I would just love to see more women and just people in general getting out in Kokopelli.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, that's kind of why we went and did it. We're like, this has just been there for so long that it just needs to be beaten. So congrats on going and getting that for sure.
thank you.
So
It's pretty
I'm
exciting.
sure you'll inspire a lot of women to go after it, and there'll probably be a lot of women like us that have lots of failed attempts, but it'll be cool to see the people, more people go after it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been there too. Like, I think that's something just for everyone to remember, is that like it takes a lot to end up with those days where that stone breaks and turns into a big feet or a diamond or whatever, and like it's all the pounding that gets there, and that is often like times like the experiences we all had where you're like, oh wow, this is like not what I planned for or what I thought it would be, and then you learn from that experience and learn some more from other people or your own additional experiences and go for it again.
Cool.
And you have good memories from it too, I'm sure.
I know. And I also feel like it just fills you with this fire and passion and excitement for something, you know, which this year for a lot of people has been kind of devoid of. So
Totally.
It's kind of, that was really my first introduction to, well, not necessarily. I've done like some ultra running and stuff like that, but to like more longer endurance type biking. And I feel like I just have all these goals now and things I want to do. And when you were talking about biking to Patagonia, I was like, man, I would love to do that.
Yeah,
it's just like
it's awesome.
So many fun things in the world to go do.
Well, one of the coolest things I think about like these shorter FKTs and ultras and longer trips and longer ultras is like there's always going to be that element of like uncertainty and unknown and adventure, and like I think it'd be kind of boring if we went out every time the first time and we were just immediately like, oh, crush that, like no big deal, you know.
Yeah,
it's more the like going and be like, oh my god, that was like really hard, like I want to go try again. That makes it so fulfilling when it works out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so
I
much.
can tell you put your heart into everything, and it's really inspiring, and hopefully lots of people will listen to this and, you know, go and conquer their own personal FKT or whatever it is.
And hopefully they all go and donate to your Backpacking Roots.
Yes.
Organization.
Oh yeah, totally.
That helps benefit Kokopelli Trail and other trails, right?
Yeah, Bikepacking Roots will benefit the bikepacking experience and access to bikepacking for people and to the landscapes that we advocate for. So, in the development of bikepacking routes for us to ride on. So, Bikepacking Roots, bikepacking roots.org is the organization, and this is the end of the year. We'll have an end of the year giving campaign here soon, and yeah, hopefully to support a lot of productive projects in 2021.
Well, I just donated a couple days ago. So.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
So everybody go donate to Bikepacking Roots. Is there like a link on your Instagram or anything that someone that we could direct?
I can put one up there, but that website and Bikepacking Roots is the handle for that organization. And just remembering that the roots is spelled like the tree root.
Roots. Well, I did it, and I just did it from the Bikepacking Roots Instagram page because there's like a donate button on it.
Yeah,
you just made it really easy.
Yeah, they make it really easy for nonprofits. It's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's good to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you all. Thank you so much.